The holographic display in Commander Vixtol's office pulsed with an angry red glow, a color that perfectly matched his mounting frustration. As the head of the Galactic Defense Academy's Statistical Analysis Division, he had spent the last 3 cycles analyzing what could only be described as an impossible anomaly. The data streams floating before him defied every established principle of defensive warfare the Academy had developed over 10,000 years. "Run it again," he commanded, his crystalline appendages clicking against his desk's smooth surface. The AI complied, and once more, the statistics materialized in the air before him. Sector 47 Delta, a relatively unremarkable region of space near the galaxy's outer rim, was showing a 99.8% successful defense rate against all hostile incursions. The number alone was staggering, but what truly baffled Vixtol was the source: a single human outpost. The commander's inner membranes flickered with disbelief. Humans were newcomers to the galactic stage, barely 2 centuries into space exploration. Their technology was primitive by Academy standards. Their ships were practically antiques, and their battle doctrine was considered laughably simplistic. Yet somehow, Human Outpost Delta 7 had achieved what even the Academy's most advanced installations could not. "Display comparative analysis," Vixtol ordered, his voice carrying the weight of authority earned through centuries of service. A new set of figures appeared, showing the performance metrics of the sector's other defensive stations. The closest competitor, a Zentari battle station equipped with the latest quantum weaponry and staffed by Academy Honors graduates, barely managed a 78% success rate. The door to his office whispered open, admitting Admiral Nixera, her bioluminescent patterns displaying the formal greeting patterns of her species. "I received your urgent message, Commander. Have you discovered the source of the anomaly?" Vixtol's appendages twisted in the gesture his species used to indicate profound confusion. "Admiral, I've analyzed every possible variable. Their equipment is standard issue, mostly outdated. Their weapon systems are nothing remarkable. They don't even maintain a full complement of staff. The station operates with just 12 humans." 12. The Admiral's patterns shifted to display skepticism. "That's impossible. The Academy's minimum staffing requirement for a station of that size is 50 personnel." "Precisely." Vixtol manipulated the holographic display, bringing up the station's personnel files. Yet they've managed to repel everything from pirate raids to swarm incursions. Last month, they even survived an encounter with a void leviathan. No casualties, minimal damage to the station. Admiral Nixera drifted closer to the display, her natural bioluminescence casting additional patterns across the data streams. "There must be an explanation. Hidden technology, classified weapon systems." "None." Vixtol pulled up the station's inventory records. "Their most powerful weapon is a modified mass driver, practically ancient technology. Their shields are standard issue, and their sensor array is 2 generations behind current specifications." "Then how?" The Admiral's pattern swirled with intense curiosity. "How are they achieving these results?" Vixtol hesitated before responding, knowing his next words would sound almost heretical within the hallowed halls of the Academy. "I believe it's their methods, Admiral. They don't follow any of our established protocols. In fact, they seem to ignore most of our defensive doctrine entirely." The Admiral's patterns froze, a clear sign of shock among her species. "Impossible. The Academy's protocols have been refined over millennia. They represent the distilled wisdom of 1,000 species. Yet the data is undeniable." Vixtol brought up footage from a recent engagement. The holographic display showed Human Outpost Delta 7 under attack from a squadron of pirate vessels. The humans' response was unlike anything taught at the Academy. Unpredictable, seemingly chaotic, yet devastatingly effective. "Look here," he highlighted a particular sequence. Standard protocol dictates establishing the symmetrical defense perimeter. Instead, they concentrated their shields on seemingly random sectors, leaving others completely exposed. But somehow, He gestured as the pirates fell into what was clearly a trap. They anticipated exactly where the pirates would strike. Admiral Nixera's patterns had shifted to a deep blue of contemplation. This requires further investigation. Not just analysis of data, but direct observation. I agree. Vixtal closed the holographic display. But who could we send? This goes against everything we teach. Most of our evaluators would dismiss their methods outright. The Admiral's patterns shifted to a decisive purple. Dr. Curates. Vixtal's appendages stiffened. The Academy's chief combat evaluator. Admiral, with all due respect, Dr. Curates is the strongest proponent of traditional doctrine we have. Exactly. The Admiral's patterns formed the complex swirls of strategic satisfaction. If these humans have truly found a better way, we need someone who thoroughly understands our current methods to evaluate. And if anyone can determine whether this is truly innovation or merely luck, it's Curates. Vixtal considered the suggestion. Dr. Curates was renowned throughout the galaxy for an unparalleled understanding of combat theory and practical application. The evaluator had personally certified or failed thousands of defensive installations across known space. If anyone could unravel the mystery of human outpost Delta 7, it would be Curates. I'll make the arrangements immediately, Vixtal decided. Though I suspect Dr. Curates won't be pleased about being sent to evaluate a human installation. Pleased or not, this requires investigation. The Admiral's patterns shifted to Command Red. The implications are too significant to ignore. If these humans have truly developed superior defensive methods without advanced technology or academy training. She left the thought unfinished, but Vixtal understood. The Academy had stood as the ultimate authority on military doctrine for longer than most species had been spacefaring. If a handful of humans could achieve better results by ignoring everything the Academy taught, it would shake the very foundations of galactic military theory. As he began preparing the official request for Dr. Curates' involvement, Vixtal found himself wondering about the 12 humans staffing Delta 7. What would the Academy's most decorated evaluator make of their unorthodox methods? And more importantly, what would they make of Curates? The commander had a feeling he was about to witness either the validation of 10,000 years of military doctrine or its complete revolution. Either way, the galaxy was about to change. Dr. Curates stood motionless in the observation deck of human outpost Delta 7, all four eyes fixed on the station's command center below. As a member of the arachnid species, Curates' tall, elegant form and iridescent exoskeleton usually commanded immediate respect throughout the galaxy. Here, though, none of the humans seemed particularly impressed, or even concerned, by the presence of the Academy's most renowned evaluator. The station's operations chief, Sarah Chen, was currently sprawled in what appeared to be a modified gravity couch, her boots propped up on a console that controlled several million credits worth of defensive systems. The casual posture made Curates' mandibles twitch with disapproval. Chief Chen, Curates' translator, rendered the clicks and chirps into standard galactic. Your station's arrangement violates 17 different Academy protocols. Your command center layout alone contradicts basic efficiency guidelines established over 3,000 years ago. Sarah didn't even look up from the holographic display she was manipulating. Really? Only 17. We must be slipping. She adjusted something on the screen, and a series of defense satellites shifted their positions in ways that made Curates' tactical training scream in protest. Last evaluation found 23 violations. Curates' secondary arms twitched in irritation. This is not a matter for humor, Chief. The Academy's protocols exist for a reason. They represent the culmination of millennia of military wisdom from hundreds of species. Aha! Sarah finally looked up, her dark eyes reflecting the starlight from the viewport behind her. And how many of those species evolved on death worlds? The question caught Curates off guard. I fail to see the relevance. Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world by your own Academy standards, Sarah explained, standing up and stretching. We evolved on a planet that actively tried to kill us every single day. Predators, natural disasters, extreme climate variations. You name it. Survival meant adaptation, not protocol. Before Curates could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The other humans in the command center snapped into action, but not in any way that resembled Academy emergency procedures. Instead of rushing to their designated stations, they seemed to flow naturally into whatever position was nearest, taking over whatever systems were closest at hand. Proximity alert called out a young man who, according to Curates' briefing, was supposed to be the station's cook. 3 vessels dropping out of FTL. Signature matching indicates Ravager-class raiders. Curates' exoskeleton rippled with concern. Ravagers were notorious for their brutality and their advanced cloaking technology. Standard protocol called for immediate distress signals and defensive positioning. Sarah, however, grinned. Perfect timing. Dr. Curates, you wanted to see how we do things. Watch and learn. She turned to her crew. Miguel, power down all weapons systems. What? Curates' translator actually glitched trying to convey the level of shock in the chirp. That's suicide. Protocol dictates. Protocol would get us killed. Sarah interrupted. Hey, Lisa, remember that broken mining laser we salvaged last month? A woman who Curates had noted was officially listed as the station's medical officer nodded. The one that shoots wide by about 30 degrees. Already on it, Chief. Her fingers danced across her console, and Curates watched in horror as the station's primary defense grid powered down, replaced by what appeared to be malfunctioning industrial equipment. The Ravager ships emerged from FTL, their sleek forms immediately deploying into a classic attack formation. Curates' tactical training automatically calculated their approach vectors, shield configurations, and weapons capabilities. By all standard metrics, Human Outpost Delta 7 was hopelessly outmatched. They're scanning us, Miguel reported, still sitting casually at his station, reading our powered-down weapons. They're probably thinking we're easy prey. Sarah nodded, looking almost pleased. Lisa, how's that targeting malfunction coming along? Oh, it's malfunctioning beautifully, Lisa replied with a grin. This thing couldn't hit the broadside of a space barn. Curates watched in mounting horror as the raiders closed in. Every instinct, every lesson, every protocol demanded immediate defensive action. But the humans seemed almost relaxed, as if they were setting up for a social gathering rather than preparing for combat. The raiders initiated their attack run, their formation splitting into a 3-pronged assault pattern that had devastated countless other stations. But just as their weapons began powering up, Sarah barked out a single command. Now. What happened next defied every principle of space combat Curates had ever studied. The malfunctioning mining laser activated, its wide dispersal beam creating a field of energized particles that revealed the raiders' cloaked support ships, the ones that would have normally swooped in to deliver boarding parties while the main ships drew fire. Simultaneously, hidden defense platforms that had been disguised as debris activated, their positions perfect for targeting the now exposed raiders. The entire attack formation fell apart as the pirates found themselves caught in a crossfire they hadn't even known existed. See, here's the thing about protocols, Sarah explained casually as the raiders scrambled to retreat, 2 of their ships already disabled. They're predictable. And in space combat, being predictable means being dead. Curates watched in stunned silence as the remaining raiders fled, leaving their damaged companions behind. The entire engagement had lasted less than 5 minutes, and the humans hadn't even needed to power up their main weapons. How? Curates' mandibles clicked rapidly in confusion. How did you know they had cloaked support ships? How did you know where to position those platforms? We didn't, Sarah shrugged. But Ravagers always use the same tactics because they always work against standard defenses. So we set up something non-standard. She stretched again, already relaxing back into her casual posture. That's the problem with relying too heavily on established protocols, Doctor. They work great until you meet someone who knows them as well as you do. Kareth's 4 eyes blinked in succession as the implications began to sink in. These humans weren't succeeding despite their lack of academy training. They were succeeding because of it. Their unpredictability, their adaptability, their seemingly chaotic approach to defense. It was all part of a system that no one had ever considered before. As Kareth watched the humans casually begin salvage operations on the disabled raider vessels, a disturbing thought emerged. Perhaps it wasn't the humans who needed to learn from the Academy, but the other way around. Dr. Kareth's official evaluation of human outpost Delta 7 had barely begun processing through the Academy systems when the real test arrived. The station's long-range sensors detected multiple quantum signatures emerging from the void between spiral arms, signatures that made Sarah Chen's usual smile vanish completely. "Swarm vessels," she announced, her voice carrying none of its usual levity. "Big ones, combat evolution class." Around the command center, the other humans straightened in their stations, their casual demeanors evaporating like atmosphere into space. Kareth's exoskeleton rippled with genuine fear. The swarm was the galaxy's most persistent nightmare. A species that evolved through combat, becoming stronger with every engagement. Standard Academy protocol for encountering combat evolution class swarm vessels was simple: retreat immediately and call for fleet support. "You must evacuate," Kareth insisted, secondary arms gesturing at the emergency protocols displayed on the nearest screen. "These vessels have destroyed entire battle groups. A single station cannot. We're the only thing between them and the Arcturus colony." Sarah interrupted, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. 15,000 civilians down there. No evacuation ships fast enough. We hold, or they die. The tactical display showed 5 massive swarm vessels, each one bristling with biological weapons that had evolved specifically to counter standard defensive systems. Kareth's tactical analysis subroutines calculated a 0% survival chance using any known Academy strategy. "Miguel," Sarah called out, "remember that weird resonance pattern we detected in their hull structure during the last swarm encounter?" The former cook, now somehow functioning as a tactical officer, nodded. "The one that looked like a musical harmony. Been running simulations on it for weeks. Think I found something interesting." "Lisa," Sarah continued, "how's our stock of those modified mining charges? The ones that kept destabilizing in the cargo bay." The medical officer's fingers flew across her console. 8 units, all highly unstable. They're basically useless for actual mining now. "Perfect." Sarah's smile returned, but there was something predatory about it now. "And Raj, you still have that collection of obsolete communication buoys." 15 units, confirmed the station's maintenance technician. "Been meaning to recycle them, but today they become art," Sarah interrupted. "Kareth, you might want to take notes. This isn't going to look anything like your textbooks." What followed was, in Kareth's professional opinion, either tactical insanity or genius, and the evaluator wasn't entirely sure which. The humans began deploying their defenses in ways that violated every principle of space combat Kareth had ever studied. They arranged the old communication buoys in what appeared to be random patterns, their positions making no tactical sense. The unstable mining charges were loaded into what looked like improvised launchers, their unstable nature seemingly ignored. Most bizarrely, they began broadcasting what Sarah called classical music on various frequencies. "The swarm evolves to counter whatever kills them," Sarah explained as her crew worked. "They expect shields, energy weapons, traditional defenses, but they've never had to evolve against back. The swarm vessels approach, their biological weapons primed. Kareth's threat assessment systems were screaming warnings about imminent death, but Sarah just watched the tactical display, humming along with the classical music still broadcasting into space. The first swarm ship came into range, its weapons beginning their firing sequence. At that exact moment, Sarah gave a command that made Kareth's universal translator stutter. "Let's jazz it up." The seemingly random pattern of communication buoys suddenly made sense. They created a complex web of overlapping frequencies that, when combined with the classical music broadcast, generated a resonance pattern that matched the one Miguel had discovered. The swarm vessel's biological hulls began to vibrate. Before they could adapt, Sarah launched the unstable mining charges. Instead of trying to penetrate the swarm's legendary armor, the charges detonated in symphony with the resonance pattern. The combined effect created a cascade of harmonic frequencies that tore through the biological ships like sound waves shattering crystal. Two swarm vessels literally shook themselves apart. A third began experiencing severe structural failures as its hull attempted to evolve against an attack it couldn't understand. The fourth and fifth ships attempted to retreat, but the humans had turned space itself into a weapon against them. The thing about evolution, Sarah remarked as the last swarm ship dissolved into organic debris, is that it can only adapt to threats it can survive long enough to understand. Hit them with something completely outside their context, and they have nothing to evolve from. Greth stood in stunned silence, all four eyes fixed on the tactical display. The humans had just defeated 5 combat evolution-class swarm vessels using obsolete communication equipment, unstable mining charges, and what they called Mozart's greatest hits. How? Greth's mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. How did you even conceive of such a strategy? Simple, Miguel answered, already running analysis on the debris field. We looked at what everyone else was doing, all those fancy weapons and shields, and figured the swarm would be really good at dealing with those by now. So we tried something nobody would expect. Something so weird it might just work. But the risks, Greth protested. The calculations alone for such a resonance pattern would take. Sometimes you can't wait for perfect calculations, Sarah interrupted. Sometimes you have to trust your gut, try something crazy, and be ready to improvise when it goes wrong. That's how we survived Earth, and that's how we'll survive out here. As Greth watched the humans begin collecting samples of swarm biomatter for research, waste not, want not, Sarah had quipped, a fundamental understanding began to form. The Academy had spent millennia perfecting protocols for every conceivable situation. But these humans, they didn't try to perfect their response to known threats. Instead, they perfected their ability to respond to anything. The implications were staggering. If this approach were applied on a larger scale, Greth's report to the Academy would have to be carefully worded. Very carefully worded indeed. The great halls of the Galactic Defense Academy had never been so chaotic. Dr. Greth watched from an elevated platform as representatives from 100 species argued in their various languages, their voices creating a cacophony that echoed off the ancient walls. The cause of their distress floated above them all. A holographic replay of human outpost, Delta 7's engagement with the swarm vessels. Commander Vixtel stood beside Greth, his crystalline appendages twitching as they watched the scene unfold. Your report has caused quite the controversy, Doctor. Some are calling it the greatest advancement in defensive theory since the founding of the Academy. Others are calling it the end of military doctrine as we know it. Both groups may be correct. Greth clicked softly. The four-eyed arachnid had spent the last several cycles preparing for this moment, knowing that what happened next would reshape galactic military doctrine forever. Look there. Greth pointed to a group of younger officers from various species, huddled around a portable holographic projector. They were studying footage from Delta 7, their expressions showing excitement rather than the horror of their superiors. They're already adapting, Commander Vixtel observed, incorporating human concepts into traditional doctrine. Not just incorporating, Greth corrected. They're beginning to think differently. Watch. The young officers had begun simulating various scenarios, but instead of following standard protocols, they were introducing random elements, unexpected variables. One of them, a young Zentari lieutenant, had apparently suggested using gravitational anomalies as improvised weapons, something that would have been considered tactical heresy just cycles ago. It's spreading. Another voice joined them. Admiral Nixera's bioluminescent patterns swirled with complex emotions as she approached. We've received reports from 17 different sectors. Defense stations are beginning to experiment with unconventional methods. Success rates? Vixtal inquired. Variable. The Admiral's patterns shifted to display data streams. Some spectacular failures, but also some remarkable successes. The Orion defense perimeter repelled a pirate fleet using modified sensor buoys and an artificial solar flare. Station Beta 9 prevented a Void Leviathan attack by creating a false quantum signature that mimicked its natural prey. They're learning, Kreth noted, mandibles clicking with something approaching pride. Not just copying human techniques, but understanding the underlying principle. Adaptation over doctrine. Below them, the debate had taken a new turn. A group of senior academy instructors were demanding that all irregular defensive measures be immediately banned as too unpredictable, too dangerous. They were being shouted down by commanders from frontier stations who had already seen the effectiveness of human-inspired tactics. The academy must evolve, Kreth declared, loud enough for nearby observers to turn and listen. Just as the humans taught us, we cannot cling to protocols simply because they have worked in the past. The galaxy changes, our enemies adapt. We must do the same. And what of our 10,000 years of military wisdom? One of the senior instructors challenged, their translator barely keeping up with their agitation. Should we simply discard all we have learned? No, a new voice answered, and the entire hall fell silent as Tara Chen stepped forward. The human had been invited to address the academy, though many had protested her presence. Now, standing in the center of the galaxy's greatest military minds, she seemed remarkably at ease. Your protocols aren't wrong, Sarah continued, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. They're just incomplete. You've spent millennia perfecting responses to known threats. That's valuable, essential, even. But the galaxy doesn't just throw known threats at us. She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed the swarm vessels dissolving under the harmonic attack. We didn't succeed because we ignored everything you taught. We succeeded because we learned from it, then went beyond it. You taught us what works, which helped us figure out what might work better. The hall erupted in discussion again, but this time the tone was different. Kreth could see the shift happening in real time. Not a wholesale rejection of academy doctrine, but an evolution of it. The younger officers were already gathering around Sarah, their questions showing an eagerness to learn this new way of thinking. It won't be an easy transition, Commander Vixtal observed, his crystalline form reflecting the changing lights of the holographic displays. Many will resist. They'll adapt, Kreth replied confidently. They'll have to, because Sarah is right. The galaxy doesn't care about our protocols. It doesn't respect our traditions. It throws new challenges at us constantly, and we must be ready to meet them with more than just established doctrine. Admiral Nixera's patterns formed the complex swirls that indicated deep strategic thinking. Perhaps that's what we've been missing all these centuries. We've been trying to perfect our response to the galaxy. These humans, they've perfected their ability to respond to anything. Kreth watched as Sarah began explaining the concept of thinking outside the box to a group of fascinated academy students. The phrase had initially confused the universal translators, but its meaning was becoming clearer with every successful adaptation of human methods. The academy will survive this, Kreth declared, but it will not remain unchanged. And perhaps that's exactly what we needed. As if to emphasize the point, alarms began blaring throughout the academy. A new threat had been detected in a nearby sector, something the sensors couldn't even properly classify. The hall fell silent as everyone waited to see how the academy would respond. Admiral Nixera's patterns shifted to Command Red. Dr. Kreth, Commander Vixtal, shall we handle this according to protocol, or shall we try something new? Sarah Chen's grin was infectious as she stepped forward. Why not both? One solar cycle after the events of the Academy, the Galactic Defense Network had transformed almost beyond recognition. Dr. Curates stood in the newly constructed Adaptive Defense Training Center, watching as students from across the galaxy participated in what the humans called a hackathon, an intensive problem-solving session where traditional academy protocols met human improvisation head-on. The main simulation chamber was a marvel of both engineering and chaos. A young Zentari cadet had just successfully defended against a simulated Void Leviathan attack using nothing but modified maintenance drones and artificially generated solar wind patterns. Meanwhile, a human instructor was teaching a group of crystalline Vixtalians how to repurpose their natural resonance properties as impromptu weapons. Still hard to believe sometimes, isn't it? Sarah Chen appeared beside Kareth, now wearing the formal insignia of the Academy's first Human Defense Integration Officer. A year ago, half these techniques would have gotten someone expelled. Kareth's mandibles clicked in amusement. A year ago, I would have been the one demanding their expulsion. The arachnid evaluator watched as a team of mixed species worked together to solve a complex defensive scenario. Now look at us, actively teaching people to break protocols. Not break them, Sarah corrected, watching as the simulation team successfully repelled their attackers using a combination of traditional formations and improvised tactics. Evolve them. That's the real lesson we brought to the galaxy. Evolution never stops. The chamber's main doors opened to admit Admiral Nixera, her bioluminescent patterns displaying the complex swirls that indicated satisfaction. Behind her came Commander Vixtal, his crystalline form reflecting the holographic displays that filled the room. The latest statistics are in, the Admiral announced, her patterns shifting to display data. Defense success rates across the galaxy have increased by an average of 47% since the implementation of the Integrated Defense Protocol. The Human Protocol, you mean? Commander Vixtal added, his appendages forming the gesture of approval. Though I suppose we should call it the Adaptive Protocol now. Call it whatever you want, Sarah shrugged, as long as it works. And speaking of working, she gestured to the main tactical display, where real-time data from across the galaxy streamed continuously. Look at that pattern recognition matrix we installed last month. It's already identifying potential threats before they fully materialize. The matrix was another human innovation, a system that looked for unusual patterns rather than specific threat signatures. It had already prevented 3 major attacks by identifying enemy movements that traditional sensors would have missed entirely. The Academy Council meets tomorrow to discuss the next phase. Admiral Nixera announced, her patterns shifting to a more formal configuration. They want to expand the program. Not just defensive protocols anymore. They want to apply this adaptive thinking to everything. Research, exploration, diplomacy. They want to change 10,000 years of tradition, Commander Vixtal observed. There will be resistance. There already is, Kareth confirmed, gesturing to a news feed showing protests outside some of the more conservative academy branches. Change is never easy, especially for institutions as old as ours. But the evaluator's 4 eyes focused on a group of cadets who were enthusiastically sharing ideas, their species differences forgotten in their excitement. It's necessary. A sudden alert drew their attention back to the tactical display. A new signature had appeared in the Carina sector, something massive and completely unknown. Traditional sensors couldn't even classify it. Perfect timing. Sarah grinned, already moving toward the command station. Let's show them how the new academy handles the unknown. What followed was a symphony of cooperation that would have been impossible just 1 cycle ago. Traditional academy analysis provided the framework, while human-inspired improvisation filled in the gaps. Veteran instructors contributed their vast knowledge of known threats, while younger officers proposed unconventional applications of that knowledge. The unknown entity turned out to be a previously undiscovered spacefaring species, their massive ships powered by technology that operated on principles the Academy had never encountered. Under the old system, this could have led to a diplomatic disaster. Instead, the combination of established protocols and adaptive thinking allowed for peaceful first contact. You see, Sarah gestured to the tactical display, where the new species ships were now exchanging peaceful communications with Academy vessels. This is what we've been trying to tell you. The galaxy is too big, too varied, too surprising to handle with rigid protocols alone. You need both, the wisdom of experience and the flexibility to adapt when that experience isn't enough. Grith watched as the various teams throughout the center continued their work, each one representing a perfect blend of Academy discipline and human creativity. The evaluator's mandibles clicked in a pattern that translated as profound satisfaction. "I remember when you first arrived at Delta 7, Greth said to Sarah. "I thought you were going to get everyone killed with your unorthodox methods. Now look at us. We're teaching those methods to the next generation of defenders." "Not just the methods," Commander Vikstall corrected. "We're teaching them how to think, how to adapt, how to face the unknown without fear." Admiral Nixera's patterns formed the rare configuration that indicated optimism about the future. Perhaps that was the greatest lesson the humans taught us, not just how to break the rules, but when and why to break them. Not just how to survive, but how to thrive in uncertainty. The tactical display lit up again. Another alert, another unknown situation demanding response. But this time, no one in the center panicked. No one rushed to consult ancient protocols or demanded adherence to traditional responses. Instead, Sarah watched with pride as her students, human and alien alike, began working together, combining the best of both worlds to face whatever challenge the galaxy had thrown at them this time. "That," she said, pointing to the seamless cooperation before them, "is evolution in action. And it never stops." In the depths of space, Human Outpost Delta 7 continued its watch, no longer an anomaly but a symbol of what was possible when tradition and innovation learned to dance together. The galaxy might never be predictable, but thanks to a handful of humans who dared to think differently, it had become a little less frightening and a lot more interesting.